Yeah, what do you think Zappa would have thought of the at the time? What do you think Zappa thought of the progressive rock scene, like bands like Yes and Genesis? Would that have been his cup of tea? I can't imagine him listening to that sort of music.
He wasn't that impressed.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about this new album. This new album, Cosmic Cathedral's Deep Water, which is actually released on the 25th of April. And I would urge you all to go out and buy this. There is a purchasing link just below this video. Chester, if I may, the first question is a fairly obvious one. And that is, how did this album come about?
Okay, well, I met Neil Morse, excuse me, backstage at a Steve Hackett concert, actually, here in Nashville. And he reached out a few days later, and we got together, went out for lunch. Then we came to my place, and actually had a jam session, just the two of us. Then we did it again out at his place. This time he had brought in his engineer that records all this stuff, and we did that a couple of times. Then we spoke about what guys would be fun to include, with the sort of same sort of thing where we just kind of jam and see what happens. And we both agreed on the same two guys. We had both done stuff with them, Phil Kagi and Byron House. And man, we got together, jammed with those guys, and it just happened. Something special happened. And most of the stuff on the album in two tunes that he had written, completely. Neil's really great at arranging and putting together all the bits and pieces. But like I say, about I guess 80% of it or whatever, it was just results of us getting together and the natural chemistry that happened.
Yeah, yeah. A Deep Water Suite. Tell us about the recording of that track. I mean, it's such an epic number. Was it recorded in sort of bite-sized chunks, or was it a whole sort of studio run through? How did that work?
Well, I don't know if you've had a chance to hear it yet,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I have. It's absolutely
it's
marvelous.
definitely bite-sized chunks. I mean, it's a lot of pretty complex stuff, and so yeah, that I mean, some of it we did longer sections than others, but um, yeah, I mean, every song was different. It's not like the same formula worked for every single song.
Are there plans to reproduce this live?
Well, we got one thing scheduled in October. Neil does this Morse Fest in different cities. He's going to do one here in October. And we're going to do that. We're looking to try to set up a warm-up thing for it. We're, I mean, everybody's busy, basically. Neil probably busier than everybody, actually. But between all of his projects, we've been talking about it because we really had a pretty good time doing it and would love to play it live. So that's,
Mm.
but then it gets down to promoters and venues and all that sort of, all that other side of things.
Well, I'd certainly like to hear it live. It's certainly an epic number. You've got a writing credit on this number as well.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the lyrical direction that the number took?
Well, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, basically, one of the other things that we have all in common is that, we're all, committed Christians, and
A happy
so the
Easter to
lyric
you.
content is definitely in that direction. I don't mess with the lyrics much. I tend to I deal more with the instrumental side of things as far as what I contribute in the writing and all that. But no, it's obviously something like that. We've all got to be on the same page, otherwise there'd be a bit of controversy with it, because the lyrics toward the end, especially, they get, pretty clear what's going on.
Yeah.
But that was one of the concepts of the album. That was one of the things that, let's do something slightly different in that everybody be on the same page, for spiritually and philosophically, and it worked out. Yeah.
And is that what the Cosmic Cathedral is? This idea of you all being of one voice?
Yeah, I think so. Especially because it happened naturally that way. It's not like we came in with this game plan. Okay, we're going to do that, and that. Like I said, most of it, and the thing that really was appealing to each of us, I think, was the fact that when we just got together and played, something happened. I mean, there's no denying. I mean, chemistry within a band is kind of the main thing, really. I mean, this is not like somebody wrote out a bunch of things and charted it all out. Okay, you guys are, session players come in and play exactly what I wrote. No, this wasn't that at all, you know.
Yeah. I mean, talking about chemistry within bands, you're on the record as saying that playing for Frank Zappa prepares you for anything. Um, I wonder, I mean, what was the chemistry like between Zappa and the musicians he worked with? What was the worst you ever saw him? Could he be difficult at times?
I happened to work work with Frank in a time when I think he was pretty happy in his life during the period I was working with him. I mean, he really on tour. He would come and hang out with the band after shows and stuff, which apparently didn't happen a lot. You know, no, I think Frank's main thing was if you were willing to do the work and really learn the music, which was obviously very difficult at times. I mean, man, I got no sleep the first month of rehearsals. You know. Yeah, basically, you know, Frank saw that you were making the effort and really respecting what he did. There were no problems, you know.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've heard stories about, you know, other periods, you know, where things could be difficult, but I was pretty fortunate that it never went there. I mean, in fact, he would sometimes try to write things that the band couldn't play, and he just couldn't come up with anything that that band couldn't play, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty fun, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think your last album with Zappa was Studio 10, wasn't it? Did you play on
That was,
Studio 10?
it was Studio 10. That was the last studio thing I did
Right.
with him.
But no, it was Bongo Fury is the album that Captain Beefheart collaborated with Zappa on. Now you said in a previous interview on this channel that Captain Beefheart was an absolute sweetheart. So I've got to ask you, where do you think he
Yeah.
gets his fearsome reputation from?
I don't know. I only encountered him in that one situation. He was really humble. The
Hmm.
guy was just really nice to everybody. Obviously, his approach to doing things is way different from Frank's, you know.
Hmm.
But again, I think everybody respected him and really tried to honor what he did. You know, yeah, it wasn't yeah, there was no. I'm trying to think. In fact, matter of fact, the trombone player, Bruce Fowler, ended up doing quite a lot of work with him later where he was actually playing bass lines on his trombone, you know,
Hmm.
which is typical you know, for Don's approach to things. He
Yeah.
definitely had a different point of view. No, yeah, I'm not even familiar with the other side of whatever people thought of him. I'm glad I didn't experience whatever that is, you know.
Was there a lot of creative friction between Captain Beefheart and Zappa?
Not that I witnessed.
Mm.
No, yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, he was featured in the show, but it wasn't like, no, I mean, I don't know that there was a lot of collaboration between them,
Hmm.
but I never saw any signs of friction.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, when you were performing for those Roxy shows, do you feel that you were actually part of something really special when they were recording those shows? And how much of the recordings were tampered with in the studio? Did you do any overdubs on them?
I didn't. I'm sure maybe they might have cleaned up some stuff, I'm pretty sure, but no, Ralph and our drum tracks, they came out just as we played them.
Huh?
Um, yeah, yeah, I mean, I was pretty green at that point. I'd only been in the band. I mean, I've been playing for years, but uh, I mean, my first sort of 10, 11 years were playing cover tunes and, you know, traveling, but, you know, playing somebody else's stuff. That was one of the first experiences with really extensive original, you know, stuff really tweaked to that level. And so I have, you know, I look back and it's like I was pretty clueless for a lot of that period. Yeah, I mean you know, the infamous thing that keeps coming up, that you know, young lady that would, you know, Frank sent her back to mess with me while we were playing because it was the night of my 25th birthday.
Uh-huh.
Well, after midnight was my birthday, and so I think that was the second night. We did 2 nights there, and Frank says, you know, I didn't even know what was going on. Frank just kind of go mess with the drummer, you know, and uh, and so I'm cracking up laughing because I thought it was hysterical. I mean, I had no idea that it would have a life up to now. You know, it was just a fun gig. It was a crazy gig we did. They did. I knew they were recording. Obviously, there's video cameras everywhere, but the quality wasn't very good in those days.
Mhm.
Um, up until it was released, in the last few years, all I saw was some sort of third generation video clips which were not good quality at all.
Yeah.
They were very fuzzy and all of that. I guess with the change in technology and being able to clean up, the base, the original signals and stuff. Yeah, I mean, because it never really got released in the day. I think he was hoping it would, but I
Mm.
don't think, obviously he didn't get to see it come out,
No.
and I had pretty much forgotten about it. Well, not obviously you don't forget a gig that was, that was that intense. I mean, there was the recording, of course,
Mhm.
but the video thing, I had no idea would ever come out.
Well, it's such a highly regarded concert now by Zappa fans. It's
Oh
just a
yeah,
wonderful show.
yeah,
Um,
it's very typical.
excuse me.
If you've never seen Frank, that you got a good dose of what it was like, in that Roxy thing.
What was interesting is apparently Zappa was making working on a four-channel quad mix of that album. I don't know if it was ever been released. I don't know if you've heard anything.
Well, no, I don't know unless something radically different happened. I remember going to his house a couple of times, and when the quad was first existing, when it was first being brought out, and we all went over a couple of times and listened to some things, and he wasn't very impressed with it. You know, yeah, I mean, it depended on where you were sitting and all that sort of thing. He had, set up the room with speakers and all of that to hear it, but um, yeah, he was. I mean, he was always looking for the next new technology thing, of course. But
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I have no idea if it if it comes out, it would be today's technology that would make it work.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose quad mix now and it's all 5.1 these days, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
six speakers
exactly,
rather than four. But
exactly.
interesting, the track Gregory Peccary, it featured on the Studio Tan album, but it was a track that had been knocking about since about 75. Did it feature in the live set before the Studio Tan album? Do you remember playing on it?
No, not before we did the album. No,
Right,
yeah,
right.
it didn't really come up. I remember learning it for the album,
Hmm.
but I don't remember ever performing it live. No.
Right, right. This will make you happy. Robert Christgau said of One Size Fits All that Frank Zappa's band is rhythmically slicker than Zappa has ever been before. Did you see that review and did you take that compliment well?
I never saw that review actually. Slicker, that's an interesting term. Well, I mean, the band was tight, but I
Yeah.
mean, with that album, okay, the tour before that album, the bass player had broken his hand.
Hmm.
Okay, and well, he broke a finger in his hand. He couldn't play, and so we tracked that. There was this wonderful place called Caribou Ranch that existed for a period, and we went up there to record it. So basically, my drum tracks were pretty much done. I think George Duke might have been playing like key parts there, but there was no bass happening at the time I laid my tracks and stuff. And we all pretty much tracked it separately. Ruth, did her part separately. We didn't track them at the same time, which is really interesting considering how tight that stuff is. But I mean, the rehearsals were like 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And the detail that you went over in those rehearsals, I mean, it was just etched into your brain forever. So we were able to do it. But like I said, there was no live bass when we recorded. Frank didn't record his guitar parts at the time either. Um, so I just find that interesting that's the comment actually about it. I mean, it all worked out well. I mean, we were definitely a tight band at that point.
Yeah.
So as parts got added, everybody knew what to do. But yeah, it wasn't as if like other things I'd recorded in the studio with, and we were all there playing together at the same time. So this one, yeah, I don't think there was any sterility to it by any chance, but
Mm.
at all. But again, I'm finding that maybe I don't know, maybe he's picking up on the fact that it was had to be done assembled in the way to where it all really fit perfectly, as opposed to the human error of feeding off of each other and messing up a bit every now and then.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got the wonderful One Size Fits All. It's got the wonderful Inca Roads on, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, exactly.
Do
And
you
that solo,
remember?
the guitar solo was lifted from a live concert on tour in Europe, actually.
Really? Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember recording, ever recording something like that and thinking, yeah, I'm a part of something really special here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, prior to that, I'd done some recordings. There was a guitarist I worked with in Baltimore growing up, and he ended up with a record deal. We did some recordings, would go up to New York and record, but it was all pretty new to me still at that point, you know. I guess working with Frank is when I really, and from that point on, where I, got to be a part of some really intense recording sessions and at a definitely different level than I had been a part of. And so yeah, those in the preparation, of course, with Frank. The cool thing about Frank that I remember, we never learned a song, we never recorded a song first and then had to learn it on the road. Everything we ever recorded was well tested on the road, actually. As far as the band stuff. Now, Studio 10 was a whole different story. It's like, room full of studio players and, and all of that. So that was very different than the stuff we did as a band.
Hmm.
But that was the only time. Well, in actual fact, I take that back because I'd had those charts long before the recording session, to start working on them and tweaking them,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
whatever sort of demos he put together at that point, everything is cassette in those days. So,
yeah, yeah. Um, Interesting. I mean, you said that Genesis seemed very English to you. What did you mean by what did you mean by that? Very English.
well, yeah, well, they were. I mean, okay, here's the deal. Musically, from my perspective, being a drummer and just a musician, um, it's kind of like, have you been to the States recently at all? Or,
I haven't, no.
okay. Well, it used to be when I started traveling, every region had a completely different feel. You go to
Yeah,
the South, you go to the Midwest, different restaurants, different everything. And now we have the same chain restaurants everywhere you go, the same hotels, the same, everything's very homogenized now.
yeah, yeah.
And musically, before the invention of the drum machine, okay, that was the culprit. Every nation, every culture had its very distinctive stamp. You heard a British band, you knew that's a British band. You heard a German band, you knew you heard South Americans, Cuban, and with the invention of the drum machine and then the technology of sequencing, recording into the computers and that, well, even before that, even just with the drum machines especially, all of a sudden everybody's got these perfect drum sounds that you can program, but there's a sort of a sameness, that started bringing in this whole homogenous thing. And prior to that, like I say, I feel like a lot of cultures' identities almost got lost with the advent of technology. I
Hmm.
don't know if you guys are bombarded with chain restaurants and all
Yeah, yeah,
everything over
yeah,
there. I've not been there in a few years, but um, yeah. And so, and like I say, in those days, it was just. I mean, I'm coming out of Zappa, Weather Report,
yeah,
Pointer Sisters. Even the immediate thing I just before coming over for rehearsals for Genesis was a Broadway show called The Wiz,
yeah.
which and I was playing with the touring company of that, which was soul music, R&B or whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm doing prog rock. It's like, whoa, what's going on here,
Mm.
Which and that was my introduction to prog rock. I mean, for whatever reason, Frank didn't seem to be categorized in that, although what he was doing was more progressive than anybody.
Yeah.
But but it wasn't quite the same thing. But and so for me, that was culturally and musically, it was just a big, big difference. That was my
Hmm.
first time spending a lot of time in England. No, had I been there? I'm trying to think. I don't think it. Yeah, I had played in London with Weather Report. That was the only time I'd ever played in London prior to Genesis.
Yeah.
And I guess Phil came to that concert as well. So,
Yeah,
um,
I think coming to America, coming to England from America in the 70s, England must have looked quite grim, I think, in many respects.
well, I don't know if I would call it grim, but culturally radically different. I mean, so the first time, okay, I stayed in hotels the first couple of times, but after that, they would put me up in a flat and I'd have a car. So I got
Hmm.
to know the city quite well and dive into the culture a bit more. But the first flat they gave me, I'm like 2 blocks off of Kings Road, you know,
Okay. Okay.
and I'm seeing the blue mohawks and the, all the crazy hairstyles and
All that punk stuff breaking out.
yeah, all the punk stuff was like, I guess it was like the latter part of it, but it was still very, very much active. And so, we'd walk around the corner and walk them down Kings Road. It was quite entertaining, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it was just a different culture. I mean, I don't think we didn't have anything quite like that in the US at that time. I mean, you had the hippie thing that happened, was happening, but even still, still very different.
It's funny you mentioned progressive rock. A lot of people like to put Zappa under that progressive rock umbrella.
Well, it makes
Um,
sense,
how do you
sort of.
feel about that?
Well, I mean, if you depends on how you define progressive rock. Yeah, he absolutely was very progressive. The difference, well, he didn't write so much well, a couple of his things, like Apostrophe is one of my favorite albums, with this ongoing narrative of Nanook, the Eskimo boy.
Yeah.
So I guess that would, I mean, in that case, you had this ongoing theme and these different movements and all of that sort of thing, and the odd times, everything that sort of seems to make up that genre.
Yeah.
Uh, but Frank didn't like labels, and so he didn't. It was certainly never promoted that way as the prog movement. I mean,
Mhm.
and even recently, all of a sudden, I'm back, in the whole prog world. And a couple of years back, I did a tour with a band, an Australian band called Unitopia.
Uh-huh.
We did an album with them and toured and stuff. And I was actually pleasantly surprised how strong the whole prog genre is. I mean, it's alive and well and great stuff going on.
Yeah. What do you think Zappa would have thought of at the time, what do you think Zappa thought of the progressive rock scene, like bands like Yes and Genesis? Would that have been his cup of tea? I can't imagine him listening to that sort of music.
He wasn't that impressed.
He wasn't impressed at all.
Not really. No, I mean, okay, his biggest influence was Stravinsky. Okay,
And
another,
Varese as well.
yeah,
I think.
and Varese.
Yeah.
Those were his major influences.
Hmm.
And Frank, the thing about Frank wrote everything. I
Hmm.
mean, all the tunes were charted out and wrote. I mean, your reading had to be pretty strong, to get through that stuff. And my reading certainly grew in those couple of years I was in that band. It grew by leaps and bounds. Um, but I mean, I've sat and watched him sit on a plane, manuscript paper, tray pulled down, him writing charts furiously, right? We
Hmm.
get to the sound check, he passes out, everything's perfect, you know? I mean, people don't realize sometimes when we first did a brand new tune, he wouldn't play his guitar for the most part. He says, no, I have to practice it. I can't play it yet, because he didn't write from the guitar. He actually heard it in his head and wrote it down,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
pretty amazing. I mean, that's kind of going back to like Beethoven and those kinds of guys where, they're hearing all these amazing interweaving parts, but they're hearing it in their heads.
Well, it's
Um,
interesting what you said about Zappa and progressive rock because Lester Bangs said he didn't like progressive rock. He says it's not rock and roll. Rock and roll should come from that African American idiom, whereas
mhm,
progressive rock is drawn from a more Western symphonic tradition. So
right.
he didn't like it either. Um,
This, who was
sorry,
that?
that was
Who?
Lester Bangs,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but he wasn't a fan of all that. But and even for John Peel he in the UK he rejected I think progressive rock for the emerging punk and new wave scene really thought it was something that was more honest I guess
Yeah,
but
I get that, sure.
yeah. Phil Collins an underrated drummer yes is that true do you think?
Oh, he's certainly not underrated. He won Modern Drummer of the Year thing maybe what 7 or 8 times in a row.
Yeah.
So within the world of drumming, it was nowhere near underrated. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe to the general public until In the Air, until In the Air came out and people realized, oh wow, brilliant. But the stuff he played with Brand X and with early Genesis was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the guy played incredibly. I mean, the fact that he was self-taught and came to the conclusions he came to, I thought were pretty brilliant, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
I mean, when you
basically,
were with Genesis, I mean, you were playing all that prog stuff. How
hmm
did you feel about within Genesis that transition from the very progressive stuff to the more more commercial, poppier direction
Well,
they took. Were
well,
you happy
being
with that?
around, yeah, being around them and seeing how, the way, I mean, I wasn't involved in the writing sessions, of course, but they put the same amount of care into everything they did. I mean, my opinion of it is that it was the same quality of music. They just learned how to say in 5 minutes what it used to take 10 to say.
Uh,
There were a couple of novelty things that were pretty silly, of course,
yeah,
but no, for the most part, I don't think they set out to, oh, we're going to write a hit. I never got that impression. Obviously, as they got more skilled at crafting shorter songs and stuff, and their stuff still never sounded like everybody else.
yeah, they had something very distinctive about them,
Yeah,
I
oh,
think.
absolutely. Yeah, the chemistry between those three was pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah. I've got to end on an interesting question I always ask everybody. That
Yeah,
is, Frank Zappa said, "Jazz isn't dead; it just smells funny." Um,
that's
uh,
typical Frank. That's
but
just
given
that's Frank.
given the with rock concerts now, with so many people playing the backing tapes, miming, and all these controversies, with all that going on, how healthy then is rock and roll, do you think?
Oh boy. Well, it's kind of like, I mean, being a musician, I'm not a big fan of genres, first of all.
Hmm.
I'm a drummer. I mean, people say, "Oh, he's a rock drummer, he's a jazz drummer." I'm a drummer. I'm a musician. I There's nothing I love more than diving into all these different styles and genres and being able to kind of fit. That's you know, if I was more self-conscious, I probably would have become an actor because I love the whole concept of diving into something and really and trying to reproduce it. Um, so the genre thing kind of, you know, I mean, at the same time, the technology, okay, um, I think profitability is the driving force far too often in the arts, in music especially. And I mean, when I look back at my career, Weather Report, Zappa, Genesis, um, Santana, even, I think my takeaway is that it's honesty that makes it work. The groups I've played with, I've been fortunate enough to be with these groups at the top of their genres, but getting an inside look and seeing the honesty that went into it. They would never. I'm not aware of decisions that were made. Oh, let's do it this way. I mean, if Frank wrote something really pretty, really beautiful, he would totally distort it and said, "Wait till they hear this." It's like so he was the commercial guy.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I mean, obviously it is what it is today. I think there's still lots of honest groups making really good music. Um, Jazz, I've played more jazz in my life than anything. My very first drum set lessons were all jazz.
Hmm.
In between tours, you find me on a jazz gig somewhere for the most part,
Yeah.
because I love the expression that you play in the moment. You're not playing a scripted part over and over and over and over. You're
Yeah.
creating and interacting with people like at that very moment. And so and there's some phenomenal jazz players and recordings going on these days, but there's some, yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm not great at categorizing. Oh, I hate this style. I hate it. No, no, we got great players. We got creative people. Yeah, there's a lot of commercialism. There's people that are very skilled at, appealing to the masses. But then there's some amazingly creative people that keep keep the growth going, I think.
Mm. I mean, talking about bands miming on stage and playing to backing tracks, John Lydon, he used the word fraudulent to describe it, really, which I'd rather hear something live, even if it's not perfect, but something that's live and
Yes,
happening,
yes.
really. But
Well, in some cases, I think it's a question of production. I mean, if budgets, it used to be that record companies would do tour support.
Mhm.
Okay, they would help out. They would help the people. I mean, now the whole thing is so crazy. So you use the technology available. You go in the studio. You make this amazing sounding recording. Well, unless you can afford to take a 12, 15 piece band to cover all the bits and pieces, then the things that they can't cover live are very often. I mean, I think I don't go to a lot of rock shows these days. I mean, I'll go to hear my favorites, of course, but So I mean, it's yeah, it's today the technology makes it possible when you can't have the full string section or the choir behind you and all that, so you can put that on the track. The rhythm section for the most part is going to be live, and the
Mhm.
groove is going to be real. You know, um, so I think a lot of times you just can't afford to reproduce those. My own solo things that I've done, I like doing them in a way that I can reproduce it live. So
Yeah.
I don't go so much for the giant budget and all of that. Um, you know, but
Well, when Pink Floyd did their album Atom Heart Mother, it was done with orchestra. When they
mhm,
went on the road with it, they just had to rearrange it as a four-piece band,
right,
which is kind of interesting. I like that. I'd rather they did that than sort of had orchestra as a
yeah, it's
tape.
either that or you pick up session players in each city, which gets again it becomes prohibitive as far as budget and
Mm,
that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I said the last question was the last one. I've got to quickly ask you, what was it like seeing James Brown live?
Ooh, man, that was earth-shaking.
Huh?
Okay, because I saw him at least three times, possibly four. I think I was 13 the first time I went
Was
with
this
him.
the time when he did that live album, live at the Apollo, that famous live album?
Yeah, I'd seen him live before that,
Oh wow.
before that came out. Yeah,
Mhm.
um, and oh goodness, playing cover tunes in those days, you had to learn the whole album because
Yeah.
everybody tried to do the whole album. But I'd seen his show a couple of times before that came out, and it was amazing. I'd never heard a band that tight. The show was so precision and so tight. It was amazing, and the
Yeah.
grooves were just unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Well,
reproduced that stuff faithfully on stage. And if they didn't, he'd fine them.
yeah.
He would take money out of the pay.
Yeah. I love James Brown. That's absolutely fabulous. It's
It was
anyway,
a
tonight
pleasure
I'm
to.
just going to plug this album again. Anyway, Cosmic Cathedral, Deep Water, that comes out on the 25th of April.
Yes,
I urge you to pick up a copy of this. It's absolutely fabulous.
will
And
do.
there is a purchasing link just below this video. Chester, the hardest working drummer in rock music, in showbiz, I should say. Tonight I'm gonna go away and listen to Frank Zappa live at the Roxy in your honor.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so
Also,
much for doing this
when
interview.
when you get a minute, check out "Wake Up Call," my last solo album. I'm pretty happy with that. It's all instrumental, but it was my very first band I had in LA, and we did it during COVID, so we had to. But every
Yeah.
song started with a drum track.
Anyway, Chester, thank you so much. You
Thank you so
have
much,
a
Gary.
wonderful day.
Good to sit with you again, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. All the best.
Okay, Barry, take care.
Bye bye.